Hi everyone and welcome to the June update. Today I'm going to be talking about a lot of different things, but mostly games, which is a pleasant change instead of talking about videos that I've had to stall or wait for or having problems with. But it's going to get less and less to... there's going to be less and less to talk about as I have to pack up more and more things. So I'm basically trying to get as many games done now as possible, because obviously when I get to like September, which is when I'm leaving for Canada, I'm not going to be able to get any work done really. So there's also a lot of things I'm just trying to wrap up now because I will not be able to complete them, or I'll find it harder to do in Canada, because things like my Xbox 360 is not able to follow me to Canada because it won't work over there. And that means that my copy of The Suffering, which will not work on the Series X, which I can take to Canada, I have to play that game now to re-record it, otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do it without, like, an emulator or something. So, there's a lot of different things that I'm having to make concessions for, or just get done now so that I don't have to do it later or whatever. So, yeah, there's a lot to talk about currently. But, I've also been working on a lot of games, so I am going to talk about some of them. So I'll start off with the ones I did, I think, the earliest, and the first game that I've done recently after I finished playing, I did Care, which was the most recent video if you've seen it, before I finished Resident Evil Requiem, but then Resident Evil Requiem was more important to get done, so I did that, and then I have done Care, and then the next one after that was a game called Repose. And I'm going to be doing Repose and Tower of Mask in the same video. And essentially they are just both grid-based games, because Tower of Mask is a grid-based kind of dungeon crawler, and Repose is a grid-based, I guess, adventure puzzle game. And the atmosphere in Repose is amazing, but it's essentially you have to try and make it as far as you physically can to the next area whilst avoiding enemies and utilizing the number of spaces that you could possibly move. So you've only got like 70 something steps that you can take, and you have to try and find the correct path. And it gets tense the closer you get to the end, as it plays a little sound that it's like a hissing as you start to run out of air or oxygen or whatever it is, or energy, to get to the end before you just kind of fall over dead and have to go back to the start. And it gives it that whole like Dark Souls bonfire thing where you're desperately you're running near the end of your tether the further that you decide to push on. But it does require you basically to push as far as possible. I haven't finished either of these games, but I was just going to do them both in one video to talk about both of them really. But yeah, that's that. That's a video at some point. I don't know if that's going to be the next one that I do, but that'll be a video at some point. After that, I did Heart of the Forest, which is an FMV game. It's been a long time since I last did an FMV game, because the last one was The Bunker in 2022. They're both made by Wells Interactive, which apparently they're the people who are really doing the FMV horror games, but whatever. This one seemed a bit better. It was based on Germanic folklore of like the Black Forest in Germany, and it's a little more generic than I was anticipating considering what was going on out there. It had a bunch of cool ideas to begin with, but my biggest complaint about the thing is just how the further you got into it, the worse the acting got, the less it made sense, and it really kind of felt along the lines of... I mean, it's not too different, I guess, with some of the stuff that you would see in, like, Until Dawn. But, like, some of it was very, like, instead of... It never gave you... It felt like the choices that really mattered. Like, there was a point where a guy falls over outside a cave and, like, bangs his head or whatever, and he's already seen some horrific stuff in this cave. And then, like, 10 minutes later... he just decides to go back into a cave, and there's no input on that specific thing. But once he gets inside the cave, it's like, do you want to follow the creepy sounds, or do you want to follow the blood smears on the wall? And it's like, I don't want to do either of these. And it led to me thinking about doing a video on like the illusion of choice and how stupid, some of these things particularly are in horror games, because of, the most logical thing to do would have been not go into the cave, because with the you know when the only choice is, do I want to follow the sound that's probably going to get me killed, or do I want to find a corpse or something, you know, for the blood smears? Like, there's no good choice there, really, is there? But you know, it wouldn't be horror without a little bit of stupidity and suspension of disbelief, but there was really hard to maintain it in that one. There was just a lot of dumb things happened in Heart of the Forest. I didn't dislike it though. It was pretty good, really, but I imagine that it would be considerably worse if you had less characters alive for the number of like skips it needed to do already. But yeah, that was interesting. The next one I did was the Boba Tea. Actually, no, I did the Boba Tea Shop at the same time as Care. So Boba Tea Shop I really should have talked about first. That was pretty much just, I know, I hate to boil down the genre already, but it was basically just another game where you're doing a job and creepy stuff happens while you're doing a job. But it was pretty good. I feel like it ended too soon. It was like, it escalated really slowly, and then in the last 2 days, I'm gonna say, it just ramped up really high, and then that was that. It had a fun ending, but like, it was still kind of, I don't know, I wasn't very inspired by it that much. It was a little disappointing. There was, oh yeah, I did The Last of Us to go in with the video that was I'm talking about games that people kind of question whether they're horror games or not. I'm doing 3 of them at a time just to make it a substantial video, because there's going to be quite a lot of them. And the first one's going to have Limbo, which I recorded literally last year now. The Last of Us, which I've just finished, and it's going to have Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. And The Last of Us, wow, yeah, I haven't played that game since it came out on PlayStation 3, and it is kind of bizarre how a lot of people don't consider it a horror game based on how it doesn't really feel like it's trying to frighten you. But there are certainly parts in it that are frightening, just not in a way that like boo scary kind of thing. It's very much a presenting you with the horrors of humanity at its worst, and then kind of having you just witness stuff. It's a scary story, but it's not a scary story to chill you. It's a scary story because of the reality of the certain aspects of it, like the how easy it is to imagine how we would act in that scenario. And I think that's really what makes that game scary, but it's not going to be the same kind of thing that a lot of people find frightening. Like some of the some of the shootouts and stuff are like, can be intense, but I don't know if I would really call that frightening. Most of it takes place in like broad daylight. So you know, there's an eeriness to it, I guess. I'm still gonna, basically for the purpose of this video, along with Limbo and Hellblade, which I've only really just started Hellblade, so it's still gonna be quite a while before I get that done. I'm basically going to be talking about, I'm going to review them as if they were horror games, and then afterwards like share my thoughts about really what consisted of them being horror games or not. Can you really say for sure that these things are horror games? And talk about the things that put them together, and that's how those ones are going to go. Because like Limbo, I don't really know whether I would say that Limbo consists of a horror game. It's very atmospheric and it has some painful deaths and stuff, but I don't know if I would say it's actively trying to frighten you. Some parts in it are definitely meant to be intimidating, but I don't really know whether I would say, you know, straight up fear. Hellblade, I was surprised wasn't a horror game. And I don't remember how a lot of Hellblade goes. I remember Hellblade just feeling terrible. I only started like the early parts of it, so like I remember parts by a beach or something that are being particularly bad. But you know, it's been a long time since I played that as well. But yeah, I got a lot of recording to do basically for this video before I even, you know, properly start getting into the writing aspect of it. But yeah, that's that one. There's a bunch that I've started that I haven't finished, or that I meant to start, or I'm having problems with, or whatever. We'll talk about them a little later. So the next one is Caput Mortem, which I played yesterday. Caput Mortem was recommended by someone in the YouTube comments as one of the best horror games of all time, and I was like, well, all right, never heard of it. All right, let's give it a go. And it's really interesting. So it's basically a deliberately bad control system. Like they use I mean, I say deliberately bad, but I imagine this would have been completely fine on Sega Saturn. But it's literally like you use the left trigger and the right trigger to turn left and right, and you use the left bumper and the right bumper to look up and down. And then you have to manually control your hand with the right stick to move it to the points in the screen where you have to push A to pick things up. And yeah, that's just as bad as you think it is. So the movement is awkward, and the controlling of your only appendage is awkward. And they put you in a bunch of situations where you have to use your hands quite quickly to swing weapons. Sometimes there's not a lot of combat in the game, but the combat in the game is pretty challenging. Just because of the controls. Like there's if a character is if an enemy is at a certain elevation and you're swinging, the arc of your swing based on where you are on the screen, it doesn't always connect, and it can be pretty confusing. And there were definitely some parts near the end of the game where I was more than done with the control system. But for a lot of the exploration and stuff, it was really interesting. There were certain parts of it, especially near the lab sections near the start. I think the early game is way more atmospheric and interesting than some of the later game. But the whole premise of the thing was actually really cool. I won't go into the story of it because that's something for, trying to do a spoiler-free version of the story is going to be kind of challenging in a way. But the story is really interesting, and the atmosphere was very good. It really, I think the person in the comments compared it to like Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and I can kind of see that kind of comparison in like the themes and stuff, because of like when I think about Amnesia: The Dark Descent, I mostly think about like that 18th century kind of like melding of like science and God and stuff like that. But there wasn't much of that in Amnesia: The Dark Descent. But like it's very much a thing in Caput Mortem, where you're asked to do there's a point where you have to do a planetarium kind of puzzle, and I'm so used to doing stuff like that. There's quite a lot of games that have planetarium style puzzles where you got to put the planets in order or something, but because this game is set in like the 1500s, you have to try and, or like earlier than that, I'm not even sure, you have to basically put it in perspective to where these planets were to that 15th century mindset. So it's like, well, Earth is at the center of the universe, obviously, and then you have like Mercury, Venus, then the sun, and it's like, wow, all right. So you have like a very different kind of thing, and it's all represented in like proper symbols. Like, I'm not sure what their name behind them are. I don't know what they're but they have like their own. I've seen them elsewhere, but I don't know what the name of them is. And it's pretty good actually. The puzzles were very clever. Some of them were a little frustrating and confusing, but most of them were pretty good. But yeah, I ended up really liking that game, despite the problems I had with the control system later on. And the eeriness to it was something really, really impressive as well. There's a couple of enemy encounters that aren't really enemy encounters unless you screw something up. Like there's a point where you have to basically make hand gestures to this kind of monster thing, and you means you have to basically imitate what he's doing with the right stick, and then he's like, okay, and then he walks away. But you have to keep on doing it. So you're kind of like trying to solve puzzles, and then the thing will come up behind you, and then you'll have to stop and engage it, and then it will go away again. Anyway, I've spoken a bit too much about that one. I hope I haven't spoiled anything too much, but yeah. That's... What else was there? That was... Oh, and then there's the Complex Expedition. I wasn't really particularly enthusiastic to go back and do more Backrooms games after some of the ones that I've had to do as part of something I'm going to talk about a bit. But the Complex Expedition was pretty good. I feel... I think I'm in the minority of people even that played found footage and kind of think that found footage and Expedition are pretty much the same. There's not too much difference between them. It feels like there's a much bigger budget that went into Expedition to make it feel more like a bigger experience, but most of the areas are kind of just the same, but like bigger. There's not that much more to it. It feels like they just took the same idea and just times 2. That was really it. Like it didn't feel like I was expecting to see a lot more different biomes and sort of like experience more things in it, but there really wasn't that much to go through and do. I'm not trying to put the game down or anything, but like it felt, I think if you played found footage, then you'll probably be all right with not playing Expedition. I liked it, I really did, but like found footage did most of this stuff as well. So I didn't feel like there was anything like that new and groundbreaking. I also had a bunch of technical issues with it, which I was not particularly thrilled about because the game crashed at the same time in the same spot. And pretty much because of the checkpoint system, it puts you all the way back at the start of that area, which involves you walking through the same empty areas multiple times to get to the same point for the game to crash. And the only way I could get through it was reducing the frame rate, the resolution, and the graphics settings all the way down to minimum so that I could make it past one section, which I then couldn't record anyway. So that was probably one of the most important parts of the game, unfortunately. So I'm gonna have to try and do the video without it. There are only a couple of moments where it felt like having a because the big difference between Expedition and found footage is that you're kind of nobody in found footage. I don't think you have, I can't remember you having like I guess a playable character or anything like that. You are just like, someone with a camera, as opposed to Expedition, where you're playing as a literal like team member in a very Kane Parsons kind of backrooms universe kind of thing. It says it's not based on that, but like it's very similar anyway. But you're basically someone in a hazmat suit, and they talk every now and then, and they've got the most monotone, bored voice for someone walking into an existential horror. But yeah, there's a couple of moments based on that, which gives the game more of a story than found footage does, I guess. But there's still, the backrooms is kind of meant to be unknowable, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's not too much to talk about there in terms of story anyway, but at least it feels like progression. But yeah, that was, it's probably going to get pretty much the same score as found footage. However, I personally would be like, found footage used to be free. I think I told someone else about this recently, and I thought that found footage was free, but they've put a price tag on it now, I think. But yeah, it is basically just found footage, but arguably slightly better. So that's another one that's coming up at some point. I'm going to talk about the ones that I've started and haven't finished, and then we'll talk about all the ones that have been sent to me, because that's going to be a big video on its own. I'm also, today, going to be starting work on another 7 or 8, maybe, free horror games. I got one sent to me by a member of the Patreon team, and I am very upset that I started playing that and then couldn't figure out a puzzle and had to stop, and then I've had to do multiple things to the computer since then to get Resident Evil Requiem to play. I was basically, it's made things considerably worse, unfortunately, what I've had to do. But I was going to probably have to do it anyway. But I had an older computer that was able to plug my VR headset into, and I was able to use the VR headset and record the VR headset with that, which was fantastic. However, I can't do that anymore because I had to take the other computer to pieces to get the memory sticks from it to put in this one, instead of spending the insane amount of money that they are currently for memory sticks, so that I could fix this one to play the games, because this one's just got all the better stuff in it, really. It's without really going into a lot of detail, basically there was no way I was going to be able to run certain games on the one that could do VR, and I had to take the memory sticks out of it and disassemble it pretty much, because it can't do it. It can't play the games, and it could only just about do VR for a bit. So like, Anyway, yeah, that's that. So I've kind of forgotten where I'm going with that. But anyway, I started Downfall, which was one of the other Harvester Games ones, because I've basically done the Cat Lady, and then I've done Burnhouse Lane, which I still love Burnhouse Lane. But I've also got, and I've had for quite a long time now, Lorelei and Downfall, which are all part of the Devil Came Through Here trilogy. And Downfall, I think, is the first one that properly addresses the devil came through here, because it seems to... I only played like the opening hour of it before I had to like go back and start again because of recording errors. But yeah, the Downfall so far has got that awful feeling that they do so well, where it's like a tough social situations, like someone's being difficult, kind of not bad, or like, you know, it gives you a kind of anxiety for just kind of like social events, I guess, where like very early in the game you're asked to like talk to someone booking a hotel room, and your partner just kind of goes off on some deranged tangent that they're having or experiencing and going through, and you're kind of having to try and talk to the person like everything's fine whilst they're saying all sorts of bizarre things. And it's that kind of level of like, you know, it gives you basically social anxiety. But that's really as far as I've got, and I'm probably gonna have to do that again. But I'm enthusiastic to really see where it goes. It started off fairly shockingly, to be fair, and then descended into social anxiety. So I don't really know where the story is going to go or very much about it. I just know that it's fairly rough. So that'll be fun, I guess. Then I'll just read them in alphabetical order because that's where I'm looking at the folders. So the next one was Eclipsium, which I didn't play for more than 20 minutes, unfortunately, before I got called away to deal with something. But Eclipsium is a very surreal, dreamy, bizarre game where your hand turns into a knife, and it's all very low pixel quality on purpose. Like, it makes Care look like a high-resolution game. And you kind of... I don't know, really. It's you're going on an adventure, and it's very, like... Everything is overwhelming. Like, the colors are very intense. The sound is, like, you know... extremely vibrant. It feels like you're literally like tripping or something, and you're doing things for a reason, and it's not clear what this reason is. And yeah, it's I mean, the thing is, I would probably have to play more of the game to even understand what's happening, because after 20 minutes of the game I didn't understand anything besides, you know, go forwards kind of thing. Like, it's a linear game, but God, I don't know what's happening in that one. The next one is Idols of Ash. I am having a bizarre problem with Idols of Ash. I've seen a lot of people talk about it, but I haven't really, you know, I only really got the basic premise of it before I was playing it myself. And yeah, it's definitely got like a Souls kind of feeling, just because of that eerie emptiness and the deadness of the world, and having to climb down these gigantic foreboding structures is really interesting. It's a fun mechanic to try and have to constantly go faster than this thing that's chasing you down there, because basically the giant centipede that's like following you slowly down the walls of this place, and if you make a single mistake you fall to your death. It definitely has that death cycle thing, because there are a couple of points, even in the limited gameplay I managed to capture, where I was like just getting frustrated that I was trying to go down faster, but if I went, you know, too fast, then I would fall to my death and get put back to the last checkpoint. And yeah, it's good and everything, but the technical difficulties I'm having with it, and I can't find a solution to this again. But basically, I started getting this with Resident Evil Requiem a bit, but like after, I don't know, maybe an hour or two of recording Requiem, I started getting like really heavy stutters, like not like a lot of them, just like the game would like freeze for like half a second and then would unfreeze. And that wasn't so bad in Requiem, and it didn't really affect the game much, because I would just kind of stop then. I'd be like, right, well, that's enough. But it's doing it after like 5-10 minutes in Idols of Ash. I'm getting it like nearly immediately. And it's really difficult to try and continue climbing when you've got a freeze frame and you don't know what you're doing, and then you've got to continue all the time while the monster sounds like it's progressing anyway. So I don't know what's happening with that, but I might have to try and do that on something else. The problem is I don't have another computer to try and test that on now, so because I'm having weird problems on this one, that's kind of it. I might have to just put that one in the shelf until there's an update or I can find a solution to the problem. Which is a shame because it will be kind of out of relevance by then, but really, what can you do? The last two... Oh, I've got the last three that I want to talk about for the games that I have started that are like games that I have paid for. While We Wait Here, which again is another one that I've put so little time into it that I kind of don't really know what's happening. So far, you're alternating between two girls who have gotten away from a really bad situation and a guy who is reliving something traumatic inside a diner, and the game is apparently, based on the Steam store page, about the kind of... It's about social situations again, and it's kind of talking about these people have all come together in this diner and the end of the world is going down and you have to try and do something. I don't know. I haven't gotten far enough into it. There's cooking mechanics in there, which I, of course, every time there's a cooking mechanic, I'm interested. But it's interesting so far, but it's kind of difficult to see where it's going because I'm not very far into it. But yeah, that's While We Wait Here. That's that one. Zero Protocol was the last one, and Zero Protocol is a kind of like a lot of people, I think I describe it as like a first-person Resident Evil kind of System Shock crossover kind of thing, where you're basically in like a futuristic base or an office kind of thing. I can't remember now. I played it back when I did Care, which wasn't even that long ago, but I've played a lot of things since, as you can tell. Yeah, it was good. It was quite... I think the scares in it were pretty good. I remember jumping a couple of times in it. But it's very much a first-person kind of Resident Evil situation. I haven't really got much to say. I only played it for maybe like half an hour. I'm gonna pick all these up again, but like there's a lot of different things that I've had to start and do instead, and like Idols of Ash, I've just kind of had to put them down and, you know, move on. But there's that one, and then the last one is Mama's Sleeping Angels, which was an absolute fever dream of a game that was difficult to understand, difficult to pass. Like most of the times we were looking at, because it's a multiplayer game, so I played it with Ruby, and we both looked at things and we were going, what on earth is that? What the hell is this? What is going on? What is happening? And that was most of the game. It was like a constant, overwhelming fear of the unknown in a very overwhelming situation constantly. And it's deliberately obtuse in certain places, and mechanics don't make a lot of sense, and things happen and you don't know why they're happening or what's going on, and the environment is just really intense in terms of like you gotta climb up a children's slide up until the sky to get some kind of monster thing, and it was really weird. However, we also ran into technical difficulties with that one, not with the recording side, but the game itself seems to have some kind of like problem with the netcode or whatever. Every time that I finished the first mission and Ruby just got kicked from the game while it was loading the finished thing. So she didn't get any of the stuff from the first mission. And then when I tried the second mission, I got stuck in an infinite loading screen and she got kicked from the game again. So that's about as good as that's gone. So yeah, that's the end of the ones that I've talked about that are, you know, I've paid for. The last stuff is going to be going in the next video, which is the most recent one coming up. I've got to transfer some bits off the another drive where I've kept some of these for a while now. There's Dark Atlas Infernum, I've mentioned loads of times. Radiance of Souls I mentioned last time. Moon Knight Shift I mentioned last time. And Guion Corridor I mentioned last time. And Vartio. But there's two more. And one of them was Last Hope's Backrooms. And this one is has a lot of really odd controls to it. Not in the same way as like Caput Mortem, but like just odd choices for controls. And yeah, it seemed alright actually. It didn't seem too bad. It felt like it was going to lean into being a bigger like kind of online service kind of game, you know, multiplayer, Lethal Company kind of thing. escape the back rooms, basically. Again, there's so many of them, and it's all right. Like the thing is, it's the uninteresting type of backrooms game to me. Like, I find found footage and like the expedition, those games, I find those interesting because I feel like they're leaning more into the liminal space kind of aspects of the backrooms stuff, whereas the other one is more about running into an area and there is a monster and then you must do things while dealing with monster, and there's just so many of them now. Then they're not that interesting to me, and I'm going to be turning down future ones of these games just because there's so many of them and I don't think many of them are that great. And yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about Lost Hope's backrooms, so I'm gonna right now. So I'm gonna have to like write something down that's a bit more constructive than I didn't really care for it. The last one was 6600 The Park, and yeah, that one just felt unfinished. I've got so little good things to say about all the games that I was sent, because we've basically got Dark Atlas Infernum had amazing set design and some of the worst monster interactions I've ever seen. Then there was Radiance of Souls, which was a heartfelt attempt that just didn't really hit the mark. Moon Knight Shift was beyond weird and pretty much incomprehensible. Lost Hope's Backrooms, I just wasn't really interested in the game. Guy on Corridor is another anomaly game that felt so non-horror that I could, the fact that it was supposed to be a horror game was probably the most frightening thing about it. And 6600 The Park is essentially a game where you're just sort of set loose in Jurassic Park, basically. And there are dinosaurs that have their own AIs, that it was a big marketing point for the game. It was on the store page and in the email they sent me. And you essentially run around, and so do the dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs will attack each other, and they've got their own AI, but everything else about the game is just like poorly conveyed or just very obviously unfinished. Like, there are loads of rooms that are just kind of copy paste put in areas for no reason, that I got so many health kits and like was able to just avoid the monsters pretty easily by just walking around stuff. It didn't tell you where it wanted you to go. It didn't have an intro. It just started. It didn't have any kind of signaling or conveying or any kind of play a game relation at all. Like, it just I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So I only played it for maybe like 30 minutes or something, just because there's just not that much to say about it. I'm getting sent these games and it feels like, I'm only putting 30 minutes into it, but it feels like they only put 30 minutes into making it. Like, there's just not a lot of effort and care gone into crafting an experience that's like either immersive or like impactful or anything. You just start the game. It just feels like they had an idea, slapped something together, and now they want me to review it. And it's like, I might as well review a Dreams. Like, there's not much to work with here. Like, there's some points in it that you could say are kind of frightening when like a T-Rex comes up behind you, but like, I didn't even see the T-Rex and just died, so I don't even know what it looks like. I didn't know it was there. I just heard a couple of footsteps and then I was dead. And then it put me back in the same area and I didn't see the same animal again. It was not good. I'm just gonna say straight up. So yeah, it's been a fun time currently. There's we'll talk about the writing projects, because there's been a couple of them that I'm kind of sitting around waiting on currently, or I'm waiting to have an idea. But the next ones are obviously the Ghosts video is on a massive hold. I've kind of gotten to the point where I think trying to encompass the entirety of Ghosts, or because like I was going to talk about real life things, I was going to talk about encounters in some books that I've read, I was going to talk about real life ghost investigations, I was going to talk about like movies and obviously video games and how it translates all of that. But the thing is, when the goal of the video is just to talk about ghosts, that it's kind of difficult when, like, some things directly contradict each other, because you've got like real life ghost investigations where they don't really find anything to prove that ghosts even exist. You've got documentaries saying that people felt things sometimes, and then you've got Fatal Frame going ghosts are real, and like Phasmophobia and stuff like that, where it's like, well, there's ghost in every single house. So it's kind of, there was no through line to the video, which was the real problem. Like, it was hard to write stuff about it just because I don't really know what I was trying to say. that was kind of the problem with that one. So that one's been put on indefinite hold, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to making that, and I had loads and loads of material to work with, and then like lots of conflicting things and no through line to try and to make the video make sense in a larger scheme of things. There's that one. I'm also I haven't really worked on it in a little while because I've kind of hitting a brick wall with it, because I gave Ruby the task of replaying these games, and she's been busy. So I've been working on new stuff where she kind of does a lot of the re-recording unless I have to do it because she can't. So I needed Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, at least a better, higher quality version of that, because I'm talking about in this specific video the motivations of villains. I'm sure I probably talked about it last time, but I can't remember. And essentially what it is just boiling down how a lot of video game antagonists, especially in the horror game genre, are just needlessly cruel or terrible because they're evil. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of justification for the things that they do, or kind of like any kind of motivation to give them a reason to be as violent or, you know, aggressive as they are, besides they're evil. Like when you see something like Alan Morton in Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, which is the purpose of this, he just kills his own father at a certain point out of nowhere and transforms him into some kind of ungodly monster by splicing up DNA with that of the creatures of darkness, which are like the main antagonists of the game, kind of. Well, actually, Alan is the main antagonist. I'm going to move the microphones down. Almost knocked it over. And the real problem that I'm having is that I don't have the game footage to back that up, and I think that would help. Yeah, but like the problem is obviously that like he does this out of nowhere. Like his motivation for doing this, I guess maybe you could say that he doesn't value human life and is more interested in science than anything else. But it's like that's as much as you could possibly. I mean, that's basically just speculation. The game doesn't really say this at all. His motivation in the game is just he felt like he just did it. He did, like, he's evil. Like that was kind of the problem. Like, it's just, you boil down his actions to just having no morals and being evil. And there's no indication of, like, a change or a reason or anything like that, as opposed to something like, you know, my good example is, once again, Soma, where, like, the goal of the WoW in Soma is that it's trying to protect human life but doesn't understand how to, so it ends up, like, splicing people together with machinery to try and keep them alive in a painful state, or like putting human consciousnesses into bodies because it's got no idea what humans are, but it knows it needs to keep them around. And I suppose you could try and use like Alexander from Amnesia: The Dark Descent as another decent example, because essentially instead of like, I mean, he's evil, but he is like specifically evil because he doesn't value human life and only wants to return to his own people, go back to where he came from, and he'll use and abuse anybody he needs to achieve that goal, because that's what he wants. So that's that. That's more of that's a better example than just he did bad things because evil. But yeah, that's probably about as much as I'm gonna talk about in this bus. Oh my god, I've been going for 37 minutes. Well, this is a long update video. Thank you for paying attention and watching for this long, and I will see you all in the next one. If you view the channel regularly, thank you. If you subscribe on Patreon, thank you. If you subscribe for free on Patreon, thank you. I'm trying to work on a way to get people, there's far more people who are on Patreon for free than there are for Patreon who aren't for free. and I want to find a way to allow people who who are for free to interact, because I can't, you know, it seems like you can't, and I don't know how to fix that, so I'm going to have to look into that. But yeah, a lot of work to do, and I will see you all later.